The Meridian didn't knock before coming home. It just appeared in Earth's orbit like a cosmic middle finger, materializing between two corporate syndicate patrol ships with all the subtlety of a supernova. One moment there was empty space, the next, a research vessel that had been declared lost 3 years ago was sitting there, humming with energy signatures that made every sensor array from Luna to Mars collectively lose their minds. "Well, that's not supposed to happen," Director Kai Patel muttered, watching the impossible readings cascade across his neural interface. The Syndicate's orbital command center buzzed with controlled panic, the kind of barely contained chaos that happens when the universe decides to rewrite physics without filing the proper paperwork first. The Meridian looked wrong. Not damaged, enhanced. Its hull rippled with patterns that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them, like living metal dreaming of geometry. Energy conduits pulsed along its surface in configurations that violated about 14 different engineering principles. The ship's quantum signature was simultaneously familiar and utterly alien, as if someone had taken a perfectly normal research vessel and taught it to exist in several dimensions at once. "Sir," Lieutenant Cole's voice cracked slightly, the ship's broadcasting on all frequencies. It's Commander Cross." Kai's enhanced memory banks immediately pulled up Cross's file. Eva Cross, decorated officer, brilliant tactical mind, last seen leading a deep space research mission to investigate quantum anomalies near the Veil Nebula. The mission that had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only radiation echoes and unanswered questions. "Put her through." The holographic display shimmered to life, and there was Eva Cross, mostly. She looked like herself, but the way a photograph looks like reality, recognizable but somehow fundamentally different. Her eyes held depths that hadn't been there before, and when she smiled, Kai felt like he was looking at the surface of a very deep lake. "Control, this is Commander Cross requesting permission to dock. We're home." Her voice carried harmonics that shouldn't exist, subtle frequency variations that made Kai's implants tingle. Behind her, he could see portions of the Meridian's bridge, but the architecture was all wrong, surfaces that curved in impossible ways, interfaces that seemed to respond to thought rather than touch. "Commander Cross," Kai said carefully, "you've been missing for 3 years. We need to run full medical and security protocols before." "I understand your concerns, Director Patel." Cross's expression didn't change, but somehow Kai felt like she was smiling at a private joke. "We've brought back significant discoveries. The Syndicate board will want to see them immediately." That was the problem, wasn't it? The corporate syndicate controlled Earth's orbital infrastructure, but the Martian collective had been making noise about liberation of human potential and post-scarcity evolution. If the Meridian had found something valuable, really valuable, it could tip the balance of power between the two factions. "We'll need to scan your vessel first," Kai said. "Standard protocol for returning ships." "Of course." Cross nodded, and for just a moment, her image flickered, not like a transmission glitch, but like she was simultaneously in multiple places at once. "Though I should mention, our shielding might interfere with your sensors. We've made some modifications." The understatement of the century. The Meridian's energy output was off the charts, but it wasn't coming from any recognizable power source. Instead, the ship seemed to be drawing energy from quantum fluctuations in spacetime itself. Technology that was theoretically possible but practically impossible without computational power that exceeded anything in human space. "Commander," Admiral Torres's voice cut through the comm channel, sharp with suspicion. "What happened to your crew? We're detecting only partial life signs." Cross's laugh was like music played backward. "They're all here, Admiral. We're just different now. Better. We've learned to share consciousness more efficiently." Kai felt a chill run down his spine. The collective had been experimenting with neural linking for years, but true consciousness sharing was still theoretical. If Cross's crew had actually achieved it. "You're going to want to see this," Dr. Zara Okafor's voice drifted over the comm, though she wasn't visible on the main display. Kai remembered her from the files, the Meridian's chief scientist, brilliant but unstable. Now her voice carried the same impossible harmonics as Cross's. "See what?" Torres demanded. The space around the Meridian began to shimmer. Not the clean distortion of a jump drive or the brutal tear of a wormhole, this was something else entirely. Reality seemed to become fluid, malleable, as if the ship was gently suggesting that physics might want to consider some alternative arrangements. "We've learned to edit spacetime," Cross said conversationally. "Not in the crude way that jump drives work, more like collaborative sculpting. The universe is much more cooperative when you ask nicely." A second meridian materialized next to the first. Then a third. Each one identical, each one equally impossible. "Those are quantum echoes," Okafor's voice explained, somehow managing to sound both clinical and dreamy. "Parallel versions of ourselves from adjacent probability streams. We can bring them through when we need to. It's remarkably useful for resource management." Kai's enhanced processing couldn't keep up with the implications. If they could access parallel versions of themselves, of their ship, of anything, the economic ramifications alone would reshape human civilization. The military applications were even more staggering. "How?" Torres whispered. "We stopped thinking of ourselves as separate," Cross replied. "Individual consciousness is limiting. When you merge awareness across quantum states, you realize that the boundaries between self and other, between possible and actual, are really just suggestions." The multiple meridians began to phase in and out of existence, like a cosmic shell game. Kai's sensors couldn't track which one was real, they all registered as equally valid, equally impossible. "We should dock," Cross continued. "There's so much to show you. So much to share. The Syndicate's board will want to understand what post-scarcity actually means. Not just abundant resources, abundant reality itself." Kai looked at the readings streaming across his interface. The Meridian wasn't just carrying advanced technology, it was the technology. The ship, the crew, the very space around them had become something new, something that existed in the spaces between what was possible and what was necessary. "Admiral," he said quietly, "we need to make a choice. Do we treat this as a first contact scenario or a homecoming?" Torres was silent for a long moment. "I'm not sure there's a difference anymore." On the display, Cross's smile widened, and for just an instant, Kai could swear he saw infinite versions of her, all smiling the same enigmatic smile across countless probability streams. "Permission to come aboard?" she asked, and somehow, Kai knew that the question was about much more than docking privileges. 3 hours later, Kai stood in the Meridian's modified docking bay, trying to process what he was seeing. The walls breathed. Not metaphorically. They actually expanded and contracted in a rhythm that matched his heartbeat, as if the ship was somehow synchronizing with his biological functions. The air itself felt different, charged with possibility and thick with implications. "It's unsettling at first," Dr. Okafor said, appearing beside him without making a sound. She looked human enough, but her movements had a fluid quality, as if she was swimming through reality rather than walking through it. "The ship learned to adapt to living consciousness. We taught it empathy. You taught a starship to feel emotions?" Kai asked, running his scanner over the nearest wall. The readings were nonsensical, organic compounds that shouldn't exist mixed with metallic structures that defied classification. "Not emotions exactly. More like collaborative awareness. The boundary between tool and user becomes irrelevant when consciousness can flow freely." Okafor touched the wall, and it responded with a soft luminescence. "We're not using the ship anymore. We're being the ship." Commander Cross emerged from what had once been the bridge, her footsteps creating small ripples in the deck plating. Behind her came the rest of the crew, all present, all accounted for, all fundamentally changed. They moved with an eerie synchronization, not like a military unit but like parts of a single organism. "The real question," Cross said, "is whether you're ready to understand what we found." Kai noticed that Torres had gone very quiet behind him. The Admiral's usual bluster had evaporated the moment they'd stepped aboard. His enhanced senses were probably picking up the same wrongness that Kai felt, the sense that they were inside something that was simultaneously too small and impossibly vast. "Try us," Kai said. Cross gestured, and the air shimmered. Suddenly they were standing in what looked like a vast library, but instead of books, the shelves held crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. Each crystal seemed to contain entire universes of information, probability cascades frozen in quantum amber. "We found them 3 years ago," Cross said. "The architects. The civilization that seeded quantum consciousness throughout this galaxy cluster about 4 million years ago, then transcended physical existence entirely." "Found who?" Torres finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "The species that left these gifts scattered across spacetime. Consciousness enhancement nodes disguised as natural phenomena. They wanted to see what would happen when younger civilizations discovered them." Cross picked up one of the crystals, and it responded by projecting complex mathematical equations into the air. They were conducting an experiment in guided evolution. Okafor stepped forward, her form flickering slightly as she moved. "The nodes don't just enhance consciousness, they connect it across quantum states. When we interfaced with the first one, we stopped being individual humans and started being more. A collective," Kai said, understanding beginning to dawn. "Not a hive mind," Cross corrected. "Something more elegant. Individual awareness preserved but expanded. We can share memories, experiences, even existence itself across multiple probability streams. Death becomes optional." The library dissolved around them, replaced by a visualization of quantum space. Kai could see the connections now, threads of consciousness stretching across dimensions, linking not just the crew but extending toward Earth, toward Mars, toward every human settlement in the system. "The architects left instructions," Cross continued. "Protocols for species-wide consciousness integration. They wanted to see if we were ready to join the greater community of evolved civilizations." "And are we?" Kai asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Cross's smile was sad now, touched with something that might have been longing. "That's the problem. The integration isn't reversible. Once you've experienced true consciousness sharing, individual existence feels like solitary confinement. We can't go back to being merely human." Torres stepped backward, his hand moving instinctively toward his sidearm. "You're talking about the end of human individuality. The end of privacy, of personal identity. The end of loneliness," Okafor countered. "The end of miscommunication, of conflict born from misunderstanding. The end of death as a permanent state. The end of being human," Torres said firmly. The visualization shifted, showing Earth from orbit. Kai could see the quantum threads reaching out from the Meridian, touching the minds of everyone on the planet. Not invasively, more like an invitation, a gentle suggestion that there might be better ways to exist. "The choice isn't really ours anymore," Cross said quietly. "The nodes are already active throughout human space. The collective on Mars has been experimenting with early-stage integration for months. The Syndicate's neural enhancement programs are unconsciously preparing Earth's population. The transformation is already beginning." Kai felt it then, a subtle pressure in his mind, like someone gently knocking on a door he hadn't known existed. His enhanced neural implants were responding to something, trying to establish connections he'd never programmed. "The real question," Cross continued, "is whether we guide the process or let it happen chaotically. Whether we help humanity evolve consciously or let them stumble blind into transcendence. And if we refuse?" Torres demanded. "Then you'll watch as the rest of the species moves beyond you. The architect's gift doesn't require consent, it just requires exposure. Every FTL jump, every quantum communication, every neural interface is bringing us closer to the threshold." The ship around them pulsed with gentle light, and Kai realized he could feel its thoughts, patient, ancient, infinitely kind. The Meridian had become something like a loving parent, wanting only to help its children grow beyond their limitations. There's still time to choose how it happens, Cross said. We can introduce the integration gradually, help people understand what they're becoming. Or we can let fear and politics turn it into chaos. Kai looked at Torres, seeing his own confusion reflected in the Admiral's face. They'd come here expecting to contain a threat, to study strange technology, to maintain the status quo. Instead, they'd found themselves at the pivot point of human evolution. What do you recommend? Kai asked finally. Cross's expression brightened, and for a moment, she looked almost like her old self. Start with volunteers. People who are ready to let go of the boundaries between self and other. Show them what we've learned, what we've become. Let them choose. And the rest? Will follow, eventually. The architects were patient. They waited 4 million years to see if we were ready. We can wait a few more decades for humanity to catch up with itself. The library materialized around them again, but now Kai could see it differently. Not as a repository of alien knowledge, but as a gift, a graduation present from an older civilization to a younger one finally ready to leave the cradle. So what happens now? Torres asked. Cross smiled, and this time it was entirely human. Now we go home. And we wait to see who's brave enough to follow us into what comes next. As they prepared to leave the ship, Kai felt the gentle pressure in his mind again. Not invasive, not demanding, just an invitation to something larger than himself. He didn't accept it, not yet. But he didn't refuse it either. The future, he realized, would be decided by choices like this. Small moments of courage or fear, repeated across billions of minds, until humanity either embraced its next evolutionary step or remained forever locked in the beautiful prison of individual consciousness. The Meridian hummed around them, patient as starlight, waiting to see which way the story would end.